You're listening to the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast, episode 90. Why your teen might sometimes choose to not really bother trying on a task, not because they are lazy or unmotivated, but because they might just be lacking some confidence, or because it might feel like the safer option emotionally than trying and possibly failing. And another way we can potentially look at this instead. I'm Katie Jones, and with over 15 years in education as an award-winning high school teacher, international external examiner, and as a study coach, I've helped thousands of students skyrocket their results and confidence. And this podcast is where I share all my insights, tactics, and tips with you, the parent, so you can help your hardworking teen get happy, smart, and successful in their study, and have you both enjoy the journey along the way. This is the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast. Hey VIPs, I hope you and your teens are doing amazingly. And I will say that if things aren't feeling amazing right now, then I hope that this podcast today might be helpful to you in some way. Because we're going to talk about failing, fear, lack of confidence. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, I'm not making small of any of the issues around these topics or feelings, but rather than make this a doom and gloom and super serious episode, I am going to try to keep things a little bit objective and, well, a little bit lighthearted, if at all possible. Because, let's be honest, none of that I just listed there is fun for any of us, even as adults. And I think we can probably all agree it's even worse as a teenager when you are more vulnerable mentally and emotionally. But I do think this is a topic worth discussing because I've been hearing about this a little bit lately, and I do see it happening a fair bit for students. It's that idea that there's no point in putting in effort, or they just don't want to bother putting in effort for a task or in revising and preparing for an exam, or maybe even just doing a piece of homework. And I know that this podcast is aimed at parents of hardworking teens, but here's why I'm going to talk about this. It's because the main reasons that parents end up finding my content, emailing me or speaking with me, getting in contact is number one, that their teen is getting great results, but they're working all hours and sacrificing other things in life, their sports, their hobbies, their friends, their sleep, in order to get them. Number two is that their teen is working really hard, but not getting the results that reflect that effort or that reflect their true ability. And the third is that they can see their teen starting to lose confidence, losing motivation, losing their self-belief. Or it's sometimes already happened and they desperately want to turn it around. And actually, that third point is often because of the second scenario that I mentioned, them working hard and not getting the return on effort. And obviously, we want to interrupt that negative spiral as soon as possible, which is basically the aim of this episode, to hopefully create awareness so that you can spot things quickly if they do start happening and take action, and so that we don't just put it down to laziness or a lack of motivation or that they just truly don't want good results. Because from what I see in students who have lost confidence and kind of give up on A, thinking that they can succeed in their study, whatever succeed means for them, whether that's passing with a C grade or getting the A+ that they really want, and B, give up on just deciding to try hard. They give up putting effort in. They don't give it their all. It's usually because in times before, previously, when they have put in effort, they've either felt some sort of disappointment or worse, some sort of shame or humiliation or embarrassment about the outcome. And if that happens once or twice, we can bounce back, we try again. But for any of us, why would we bother keep trying really, really hard, putting in loads of effort if that keeps happening over and over, if we don't get the result or we feel that embarrassment or we feel that disappointment? If you are human, you would probably start to think, it doesn't really matter whether I put in the effort or not. I come out with a disappointing result either way. So therefore, why would I bother putting in the effort? So I question putting in the effort in the first place. My confidence is dented over time, and I'm going to start holding back. And then on top of that, there is fear. Fear of failure, fear of disappointment, fear that any tiny little worry in the back of my mind that my best is not going to be good enough will be essentially proven in that moment if I do try and I still fail. Now, important note. When I say fail, I literally mean not achieving something that I set out to do. Failing to complete or accomplish something most definitely does not mean that someone is a failure. It doesn't mean that a project is a failure. If a student sets out with a goal to get an A on their essay and they get a B+, is that a fail for the essay? No. Have they technically, objectively, failed to achieve their specific goal or desired outcome? Then objectively, yes, and that is all I mean by using the word fail. Of course, I totally get that fail is a highly charged and emotive word. And in terms of study, there's a whole nother layer to that. We have the concept that failing is getting a D or below, and a C is a pass. But then there are also students who feel like they failed, even if they get a B or a C, if they were aiming for or normally work at an A grade. So I know there is a lot wrapped up in this, and I want to be clear, I am not a psychologist, I am not a therapist or a counselor or anything like that. So when I talk about failing in this episode, or to be honest, anywhere that I might use that word fail, I mean it in the most literal sense. Not achieving what we set out to do, or not achieving the desired outcome. So getting back to that, we know that when that happens, or if that happens, it does not feel good. So it is no wonder that your teen might be doing whatever helps them avoid those terrible feelings, those emotions. And the easiest way, quite honestly, to avoid that is to not set the goal, to not try to achieve the result or the outcome in the first place. Which raises the question, is it better to fail if we put in our very best, but know then that our best wasn't actually good enough? Or is it better to not put in much effort and not get the outcome, but know that it wasn't that you couldn't, or it wasn't because your best wasn't good enough? You didn't fail, technically. You just didn't try because there was no desired outcome. There was no goal. Because our primitive brain will tell us subconsciously that not trying is safer emotionally and mentally than trying and failing. And like we said, failing feels bad enough as an adult. Imagine how bad it feels as a teenager. You might not have to imagine. Most of us felt it at some point and can likely still remember that feeling. I vividly remember failing my first driving test. I remember my driving instructor driving me back home from the test center and me trying really hard not to cry until I got out of that car. And then immediately I did burst into tears. And that was without any extra layers of shame or guilt or worry that maybe I just would never be good enough to drive. It was just a massive disappointment. But imagine if there are additional doubts, fears, or other worries, or self-conscious aspects and emotions all in the mix, as I know there often are for students in their study. So it does kind of follow that if we don't try, then we can't fail. But if you really think about it, that's not totally true. Because really, when you don't set a goal or you don't try for something, you're simply failing ahead. You're guaranteeing failure. Because by not trying or not attempting the thing or not doing the actions or the things that are required to achieve it, you are literally creating the outcome of not achieving it. It's a little bit like when they say that not making a decision is still a decision. Not trying is still failing. It's just failing ahead of time. You're still failing to achieve the result or the outcome. It has not been achieved. Now, of course, we could argue, and I have definitely thought this myself at times with things, for sure, that it is worse to try but still fail because you have invested something, you've put in time or money or effort or some other resource into something, into trying to achieve something. And that feels worse than to invested nothing and not have the outcome. It's almost like you haven't lost anything. So I totally get this, believe me. And I really have looked into and thought about this and taken on people's experiences and teachings over the years as I have considered this for myself. And here's the thing. There are things that have happened, ways that we've developed, or things that we have learned along the way during the process of trying to do something. And we've hopefully gotten some feedback on that effort, either explicit feedback from a teacher on your teen's assignment or exam, or feedback in the moment on what we are doing that will help us going forwards. And this is why it is so important to evaluate on any outcome, the good outcomes and the bad or the less than hoped for outcomes, so that we truly are, as the phrase goes, winning or learning. And ideally, if we can win and learn, that's gold because it isn't literally the same outcome of a failure. The two are not the same because it isn't the same outcome of a failure if we have tried and failed versus if we haven't even tried. There is an opportunity to learn from or take something away from something. It is very difficult to learn from or get takeaways from nothing. If there's no effort, no action, and no result, there is nothing to take away from that. But the feedback, the learning, those takeaways only happen if your teen is willing to critique and evaluate their work. The best way is to get detailed feedback from their teacher or whoever marked their work. Or if they're a 10-week program student or a next level member, they can bring it to a coaching call and I will dissect it with them. Or at the very least, you and they could try to figure it out together. And if you want help with that, you can check out episode 35 of this podcast. I will link it in the show notes. It's called Questions That Create Success. It's all about asking how and why. And a plea from me, please come to me in some way, shape, or form if you cannot figure it out. If you don't know exactly where and why they did or didn't get certain marks and how they could do it next time, whether that is getting marks they didn't get next time or how they can continue to get great marks next time. But at a very basic level, I will share this. A low grade or result, whatever that is for your teen, usually means one of two things. They either didn't know the content, so we need to work on how they can learn and revise and understand the subject content better, or they knew the content, but they did not put it across in the way that the question asked and or the way the mark scheme required. So then we need to work on their skills of application. And to be clear, all of these are skills that can be learned and honed, just like learning to drive. And yes, some of us will pick it up faster or more easily. It will just click. And some of us will pass our test the first time, and some of us, me, will pass it the second time, and some of us, one of my old friends in England, will pass it maybe the fourth time. But everyone can do it. What we don't want is for a fail to be a self-imposed fail. A nothing. Nothing happened, nothing to learn, nothing to springboard from. And I do understand that risk, if you want to put it that way, the risk of putting in time and effort to not have it pay off. Your teen is putting in time that could be spent on other things that are perhaps more fun for them or perhaps yield a more positive outcome. So it's really important that we do get something out of this, whether it's more awareness, knowledge, or understanding of how these things really work as a result. If they brush a disappointing result or a fail under the rug, then they miss that opportunity to gain something from the experience. Likewise, they miss the bonus opportunity if it's a great result, if they don't truly know exactly what got them those marks. And I know that, especially if it's a disappointing result, this can feel painful. But I can tell you, every student I do this with always feels so much better afterwards. They are not just carrying around a disappointing result. They feel knowledgeable. The uncertainty and mystery that shrouds these things sometimes is lifted. And honestly, they feel kind of powerful coming away from it with a complete understanding of what just happened and why and how to do things differently moving forward. So they are more likely to succeed next time. Maybe they might not even need to put in as much time or effort and still get a better result. Because when we don't even try, we not only fail ahead of time, we also guarantee that we'll learn nothing. The only thing we might get is a reinforced mindset or habit of not putting in effort and a sense of resignation that, hey, I don't get a great outcome, but I don't expect one. So there's no disappointment as such, and I then just get used to that. It feels safer emotionally, but when we realize that, we can at least understand why that might be happening. Which is why I want to help as many students as possible gain the understanding, the skills, and the strategies that they need without them necessarily having to figure it out from fails along the way. It's why I really want your teen to have the knowledge, the understanding, and skills to tackle their assessments, exams, every aspect of their study in a way that creates maximum return on effort. So that when they choose to really go for it, when they put in that effort, we maximize the chance that they will actually achieve it. And importantly, know how they did it so they can do it again and again. And keep building and honing those skills and strategies. And importantly, keep building their confidence, that work ethic, and their self-belief. And it's also why I provide the support with that training to dissect things in an objective way when things maybe don't hit the mark, literally. So they realize it's not because they're not smart enough or not good at whatever the subject is or any other personal reflection on them, but so that together we figure out for their actual work, their actual writing, and those actual questions that they've just dealt with or that task, why didn't they get those marks? And how can they do what it actually requires next time? So they build that awareness, build those skills, the confidence in how assessment works and how to turn it to their advantage. So here's to plenty of productive outcomes, whether that is a great result or at least an outcome that we can learn and grow from. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will meet you back here on the podcast next week. If you're ready to have your teen achieve their best possible results with less stress, then I want to invite you to enroll them in the 10-week Grade Transformation Program, where they're going to learn the key concepts, skills, and strategies to catapult their performance in assessments and exams. It's risk-free. They either achieve bigger and better results with a whole lot more confidence in 10 weeks, or we refund you in full. Just head over to www.rocksolidstudy.com/program, and I'll see you there.